Day at Annunciation School and Church on what has been a somber week since that tragedy of 1 week ago. And today, Vice President JD Vance, along with his wife, Usha Vance, the second lady, paying a visit to Annunciation to pay respects, to offer condolences, to meet with families and administrators, teachers, etc. And that's where Fox 9's Corin Hoggard is today. Corin, thanks for joining us here. Always tricky when you're covering a presidential or vice presidential visit, but just tell us what you're able to see and to gather about what's occurring.
Yeah, first off, got to apologize, but it's 1 o'clock on the first Wednesday here of the month in Minnesota, so you hear the tornado sirens behind me that just started. Vice President Vance arrived here at the church a little after noon, and if I turn my camera around for you here, you can see where the church is, and you see that memorial that Rob, you and I both know very well. We've covered this quite a bit, but it's quite large now. And so the Vice President got here a little after noon. He walked up the steps. You can see those 3 steps there have, maybe you can see, chalk messages on them. So he and the second lady stopped for a second and looked at those. They went up to the memorial itself. They brought flowers to add to it. They spent about 1 minute there at that memorial, and then they took a left turn, and you can kind of see the tunnel that they've created for the Vice President and his staff to walk through to go inside the church and hold private meetings. And so that's what they've been doing for the last 45, 50 minutes, 55 minutes now. So that's what we know about what they're doing. Vice President Vance said that he was going to have some private meetings and express his condolences to the family through them. We do not know if the family is there at all. We do know that, there are houses down the Diamond Lake here, where they are down here. And a few of them included residents who wanted to come out and protest, including one of them as a child who she says is Fletcher Merkel's best friend. And so their message is to protect kids, not guns. And so he may or may not have heard a little bit of that as he walked up here. And they're still out here, the kids and the adults, trying to make sure he hears that on the way out. Vice President Vance is a converted Catholic. And Pope Leo, the first American Pope, sent a message initially on the day of these shootings and then in his sermon on Sunday. And that one was an anti-gun message. He said that we should pray to God to end the pandemic of guns, large and small, that is infecting our world. And these Catholic folks here send their kids to Annunciation. They appreciated that message, and they hope that Vice President Vance gets that message as well.
And we don't know at this point if the Vice President will be making any remarks publicly or to the media after this. You've not heard anything, correct?
Nope, haven't heard anything. And for him to come to us, he'd have to come right up to the people who are protesting him. And I'm imagining that that's probably not in their game plan, but you never know. Maybe he cares to address them as well.
Yeah, so we shall see. Certainly a lot of voices trying to be heard here. And, with this occurring, as you said, in a Catholic school and church with a vice president who's Catholic, and you never know what messages they will tell him, whether it comes to legislation about their experience here, and whether that changes any of the conversations at the federal level about any additional gun control legislation.
Right. That's something Tim Walz went into Congress in the early 2000s as a major gun supporter. And then he met with Sandy Hook surviving families and changed his mind on some things regarding gun control. And, some of these folks here are hoping that Vice President Vance has a similar conversion. But, if you've heard the messaging from Minnesota Republicans, that doesn't seem to be in the cards. And they don't believe that, more gun control would have saved anybody here. they want to talk about, the mental health crisis, which they see as, the biggest problem here, not the guns.
Yeah, and there have been a lot of moves in recent years too to address mental health crises and to try to explore that angle, and yet these incidents keep happening. I know the Republican response too is to talk about increased funding for school security, including at private schools. And what do you know about that approach?
Yeah, I can tell you that the Republicans in 2023 here in Minnesota did attempt to get more funding for private schools to have school security, and that the DFL trifecta was not going for that. In fact, just this last session here in 2025, one of the ways that Governor Walz suggested trimming the budget was to cut off some more funding for private schools that could be used for all sorts of things, including security, but mainly, transportation and books and those things. So, the DFL has not prioritized sending money to private schools for any reason, and that includes specifically for school security back in 2023.
Yeah, and of course, this could also change that conversation too, as the ramifications from what we're all feeling and dealing with. And then the governor yesterday saying he intends to call a special session, but undetermined when. What is the process that you're hearing about that would lead up to setting a date for that?
Well, there hasn't been a discussion of the process, but I can tell you, Melissa Horman was assassinated about 2 months ago now, a little over 2 months ago now. Her position will be filled on September 16th in a special election. Usually takes about a week after that to certify it. So by about September 23rd-ish, the DFL will be back to its full membership in the House. That would restore a tie, though, not any kind of majority for the DFL in the House. In the Senate, they have a 33-32 temporary majority, but they need 34 votes to pass anything. So in both bodies, that would require anything to pass, would require Republican votes to go along with the DFL. Now, Governor Walz said that he is open to talking about other things, and that could include, school security at private schools and funding that. He sounded like he wanted to just kind of, throw everything up against the wall and hope anything would work. And so, that's the way he seemed to be approaching it. So he's willing to talk about mental health, school security funding, and more gun control laws, including what he wants specifically is a ban on assault weapons.
Yeah, and he had mentioned too that he's working the phones, talking to legislators, certainly legislative leaders, because they don't like to call a special session until they've sort of agreed on the parameters of what will that special session contain, rather than being open-ended. But he said yesterday, I can call them, I can't run them. That's up to the legislators to do that, but they do like to have a game plan in place.
That's right. And, according to some of the Republican legislators I've talked to, Governor Walz made the announcement that he was considering this before he consulted any of them. And he did acknowledge yesterday that, he was going to start making calls yesterday to some of his Republican colleagues. And, we did hear from Speaker of the House, Lisa Damith, that she did hear from him yesterday, and that she was hopeful that they could find some bipartisan solutions. But again, she hasn't seemed to be in favor of any, stricter gun control. And we're hearing that from most of the Republican legislators who have spoken out at all. But, Walz may know some folks in purple districts that he's trying to peel away and get their votes. I haven't heard of any, but that may be the approach he's taking. And then again, he's not going to call it probably until September 23rd. And at that point, either he knows he has some votes or he just wants to force people to put their votes on the record.
Yeah, we shall see. Corin, thanks. Of course, you'll have more on the Vice President's visit coming up tonight at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. All right.
You got it, Rob.
All right. Be well, Corin. Thanks. All right, Ron.